Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming to this event in Kirkcudbright Book Week. My name's Gerry Hassan. I'm one of the helpers and contributors to the programme. This is Miller Caldwell. We're going to have about an hour event in which Miller's going to give us his perspective on his book, A Reluctant Spy, and a kind of outline of the fascinating story of it. Miller himself is, we might even get into some of this in discussions, he's got a fascinating story in life himself. He was Church of Scotland, worked for the Church of Scotland in Ghana. When I was speaking to him on Sunday, he's been, is it twice you were captain of Rugby International, is that right? And twice, but not for Scotland, not for England, not for Wales, not for Ireland, but for Ghana. So that was quite impressive, and there's a tale there. A descendant of Robert Burns, wouldn't we all like to claim that, and he's been president of Dumfries Burns Club on 3 occasions. Now, A Relevant Spy has just been published in a new edition in the last couple of weeks, and it's a story of Hilda Campbell, a fascinating story, and some of it touches on obviously his family story, but it's got deep resonance about a real dark point in human history. So Miller's going to speak about 20 odd minutes, 22 minutes, and I'm going to ask him a few wee questions, let you all warm up with your questions, because I know that people always like to do that, and then you'll have ample time for questions, observations yourself. So further to do, over to you, Miller.
Thank you very much, Professor. Now, first of all, I'd like to say I'm glad to be back in Kirkcudbright, because I used to prosecute in the Sheriff Court, but they got rid of the Sheriff Court and they got rid of me. I'm the author of 36 books, and I should explain why I'm an author, because it's an interesting story. I was out in a dog walk one night, and I met a man who turned out to be a police officer, and we met quite regularly. And Graham Bruce said to me one day, I'm going to have a Reiki session. Would you like to come with me? So I came with him, and he got off the table, and it was my turn to get on the table. I noticed the lady constantly wafted her hands around my head more than any other part of my body. And at the end of that session, she said to me, do you mind if I mention 2 things? 1, you're going to receive a letter from your father, and 2, you're going to retire on ill health grounds in 3 years' time. And on the way back to Dumfries, I started to laugh in the car, and Graham said, why are you laughing? I said, because my father died 6 years ago. I'm not going to get a letter from him. And I'm as fit as can be. I play badminton at Kirkcudbright, Durham every Wednesday night. I walk the dog in the morning and the evening. Anyway, about 2 weeks later, a letter arrived, and it was postmarked Kirriemuir in Angus, where we used to live between 1952 and 59. And it was a letter from a lady who was in her 90s, and she was going into a home. Sadly, she had lost her husband and son in a tragic road accident. And my father had written to her, though she wasn't part of his congregation, and wrote a very carefully worded letter, which she treasured over these years, and she didn't want to tear it up or put it in the fire. And she found out that I still have contacts with some Kirriemarians, as we call ourselves, and they got my address, and she sent this letter, and out popped this letter from my father. So she was right. But I was still fighting fit and no problems until I was prosecuting here in Kirkcudbright, and on the way back there's a little lay-by just before you reach the main road. And I used to go in there and have my sandwich and get back to the office. And I couldn't remember the name of the family I just prosecuted. And I turned off the radio and I looked at my bag and I thought, it's them. I've got too much on, I'm under stress. And a few days later I was shopping in Morrison's, and I got a big selection of things, and I was putting the provisions away, and a police car turned up the drive. And I know most of the policemen because they give us the reports, obviously. And this policeman said, where have you been, Miller? I said, I've just been to Morrison's. He said, have you got the receipt? I put my hand in my pocket and produced this big long receipt. Yes, these are the things I've got. I wondered what he was meaning. He said, did you get petrol? Oh, I've not paid for it, have I? So I was sent back to pay for my petrol, and I thought, this is ridiculous. These are 2 major incidents I'm forgetting. I know what I'll do. I'll go to the doctor. He'll give me 3 months or even 6 months off on full pay to recover its stress, is what it is, stress. So I went to see the GP, but he said he'd like to send me to a clinical psychologist. The clinical psychologist said, Miller, you've got mild cognitive impairment. It's a sort of minor scale of dementia. So I thought, blimey, I can't get a job easily if you've got memory loss. So I decided to be an author, and that's why I'm an author. What was the favourite Christmas present of 1991? Now, I'm not expecting you all to reply, but the answer is Trivial Pursuit. Yes, it was Trivial Pursuit. That was played a year before we came to Dumfries in 1991. We played this game with my parents, my 93-year-old godmother Vera, and the rest of the family. It was Vera's turn to play. The question was, which two countries straddle the Brenner Pass? The answer, to save you thinking, is Austria and Italy. But Vera looked towards the ceiling and said, I don't want to return to Germany. No one suggested she would. It was a remark that came from nowhere. But I asked her why, and she recalled her time in Germany with her cousin Hilda, the reluctant spy, during World War I. She didn't tell me the whole story. She told me it would be found in the Forest Elgin and Nairn Gazette of 1914. I eventually wrote to them and included it in the book. This is what happened. Forest Elgin and Nairn Gazette, September the 2nd, 1914. Miss Vera Caldwell, daughter of Mr. William Caldwell, who was in Germany with a friend when the war broke out, had some exciting experiences. They left Hamburg on the Tuesday the 4th of August by the boat to the Vienna and proceeded a good distance down the Elbe when a torpedo boat came up and stopped them near opposite Cuxhaven. Their luggage was examined and the captain of the boat was told he could proceed. He got a little bit further down the Elbe when the torpedo boat dashed up again and told the passengers they must wait there for the night. They did so, and in the morning the torpedo boat ordered the boat back to Hamburg. Vienna reached there the following forenoon, and as war had by this time been declared by Britain, the boat was not allowed to near a landing stage. They remained all day and night and got ashore by means of a small boat about 4 p.m. on the Thursday. The ladies were taken to a friend's house, that was Hilda's home, and the situation was discussed there. They went to the British Council and were advised to attempt to get home by Denmark. They left at 1:30 on Friday the August the 7th and got to the Kiel Bridge at 4 p.m. When arriving there, all the passengers were ordered out of the compartments. By this time the rain was falling hard. They had to walk across the Kiel Bridge in twos with soldiers on either side of them with fixed bayonets. They were told to look neither to the right nor the left. Miss Caldwell, however, noticed several polished guns on the bridge and learned later that they were to defend the bridge from airplane attacks. The party got on the train again, a soldier being in each compartment, and the windows were shut closed and the blinds were drawn. At 9 a.m. the following morning, the 5th day of the war between Germany and Britain, they were ordered out of the train for a 4th time. Their baggage was inspected again. When Vera and her friend got near Copenhagen, they were advised to rebook at Eisberg, an important town on the Danish coast, which in normal times sent a boat to Harwich every day. However, they learned the service was disrupted and there might not be a sailing to England for several days or weeks. They were in luck, however. On Sunday, 9th of August, when strolling on the dock, they noticed a service taking place at the mission hall. They went in, and after the collection had been taken, the minister announced that he had received information to the effect that should any English visitors be in the congregation, a boat was to sail that night for Harwich. The boat did sail at 11 p.m. with 650 passengers instead of its usual 30 or 40, which it could accommodate comfortably. The boat was escorted to Harwich by a British cruiser halfway across the North Sea. London was reached without any further exciting incident, and after leaving her friend in Weems Bay, Miss Vera Caldwell reached Forres in safety. So, story, and I wrote about it in my first book called Operation Oboe. Because Vera told me Hilda played the oboe, here is the very same oboe in this box. It's the oboe that was played in Germany in the 20s and 30s. Put it to the side, you see you better. So I wrote my first book, Operation Oboe, and it was a book which was set in the Gold Coast, now Ghana, because for 8 years I served the church in Ghana and knew its history. The Gold Coast had German Bremen missionaries and Swiss Basel missionaries. The Presbyterian Church of Nigeria had Scottish missionaries, and during the First World War they took over the Brennan missionaries' duties. The Germans were detained on the Isle of Man, but what if an agricultural missionary had a Swiss father but a German mother and was thrilled to have Hitler lead Germany into the New World, but stayed in the post of the Swiss Basel mission because of his Swiss father? There was a spy element in detecting what he was doing. As a storybook, Operation Oboe sold remarkably well. The co-op gave me a contract and they put it in all their Scottish bookshops. I realised I could make a living as an author. I also gave the book to my uncle, the medical officer of health for Perthshire and Kinross, and latterly Fife. He came to Dumfries to visit us. He told me the real story about Hilda Campbell, who was Hilda Gunther Richter, and finally Lady Hilda Simpson, the ambassador's wife in Finland, and finally Iran and Poland. So now I had Hilda's true story, of course. It's not a biography because the dialogue's obviously mine. So is the romantic bits. I never got any of them. I put my own idea of how she got to know her husband. But the events in her life, together with world events she reported, are true and verifiable. And of course, my uncle also brought the oboe because I played the clarinet, and that's it here. Clink Street Publishers published the book in 2016, and I ordered some books to bring here, but my contract with Clink Street has expired. So Troubadour Publishers received the book along with an extra photo of the Nuremberg trials and an extended chapter, and that is the recent book which was published 2 weeks ago. Returning to The Reluctant Spy, Hilda left Aberdeen University with a degree in modern languages and honours in French and German. I've often thought had she gone to France, there wouldn't have been a story. Had her German husband, Willy Gunther Richter, not died in 1938, she would not have been a spy. But a letter from home asking her that she visit soon as her father was not in good health set the chain of events, because her son Otto was in the Hitler Youth and had to inform them that he was now staying with his aunt and uncle while his mother was in Scotland. The Gestapo took note and visited Hilda. Herr Reich was the Gestapo individual. Sorry, my right hand shakes. It's because I've got Parkinson's, not because I'm terrified of it. Hilda had a strong sense that she had already lost the argument. She could not compete with Herr Reich. She only could confront him. She drew herself up to her full height and raised her chin. What exactly are you expecting of me, Herr Reich? Now he spoke a little more warmly. Troop movements in Scotland, Frau Richter. That would be interesting information for us. New and existing air bases too. We need their exact locations, please. Nothing else at present, I assure you. You will be contacted when we need to. He clicked his heels and gave a little bow. I'm glad you see the need to remain loyal to the fatherland. You will hear from me one of our agents abroad at the right time. Hilda was speechless. The wind had gone out of her sails. She stood aside to let him pass as he headed for the lounge. He made for the front door with a parting shot. Frau Richter, I have a very high regard for you. No, you will not disappoint me. She opened her mouth to reply, but no words came out. As the door closed firmly behind her, she sagged against the wall and groped for her handkerchief to dab her forehead once more. The German war machine had found her. She had become a cog in its grinding wheel. It had entrapped her. She bit her fist. It took no time at all to realize exactly what was required of her. She was to spy for Germany against Britain, her real homeland. However, on arriving at Aberdeen, Hilda went to the police station to tell of the German requests. She was detained overnight until MI5 came to interview her from London, and soon they realised she was not a spy but a loyal British citizen. They let her go and stay with her parents, but kept in touch. Hilda met 2 agents from the German embassy in the gazebo of the Bunch Row House Hotel near Inverness. It's still there, you may have visited it. They were the Browns. They had been German diplomats in South Africa and spoke excellent English with a South African accent. They gave her a Delphin 7 secret radio. At Christmas 1938, she was invited to play a robo at the local church's rendering of the Messiah. At first she refused, saying she was about to travel and did not wish to join the local symphony orchestra. But it was the Messiah which she knew well and loved, so she played. In the audience were the Browns, who had returned to give her a salary from the German government, in sterling of course. Her father died, but not before begging forgiveness for something Hilda did not understand. MI5 gave her some training at Kirkcudbright camp near Comrie to make her fitter and able to use a handgun if necessary, but she travelled back to Germany with instructions from a British handler, namely Lawrence Thornton, to tell them about Dice Airport, as it could not be hidden, but suggested farmers let smaller aircraft fly from their fields, implying larger German aircraft could not land there. She also said there were battalions in Fort George and some other places, but she had not seen them all. This advice was crucial in 1940, after the Battle of Britain, as Hitler chose not to invade the UK via Scotland, but turned his attention to Russia. She sailed home to Germany, to Hamburg on the Columbus with a Nazi flag at its stern in March 1939. On her return, she reported to Gerhard Eich, who instructed her to report the airfields and troop movements in northern Scotland. Then he instructed her to have her photos taken, which she did in the post office, which the government had requisitioned. She was to report back to his room. There she confronted Reinhard Heydrich, who had heard of her spying and wished to honour her. Her late husband had cured Heydrich's mother, an opera singer, when he worked as a GP in Halle an der Saale. So he awarded her the German Eagle Silver Civilian Medal, established in 1937 for German nationals and foreigners who had served the nation well. When she left the room, she knelt down to tie a loose shoelace. She overheard Heydrich say that the medal should ensure she remained loyal to Germany. Eich sent her to Baden-Baden, where she learned to use secret radio, but was not given her final instruction. There she met 5 Americans, actually 5 Germans who had gone to America in the 30s, found the American economy was a downward spiral, and looked towards the popularity of Hitler and a resurgent Germany, and became Nazis. Hitler was sent to Portugal, while the Americans were sent home into the eastern seaboard and worked as travel agents and post office workers, taxi driver and 2 cafe owners. Hilda arrived at Cape Carveroro. It's a Portuguese name, I'm not too good at it. She set up a radio and hid it behind a gazunder pot under her bed, making sure it was hidden from prying eyes. She sent her first coordinated message from America to Berlin, then realised it was for U-boats to attack the British convoys returning with aid from America. She had to get out of her post as soon as possible. When the next coordinates arrived, she sent them after changing them so the U-boats would not find the British convoys. But she could only do that twice before suspicion arose. So she feigned her death on the beach beneath the cottage one night, leaving a stove to burn dry, a pile of clothes and a pair of shoes on the beach, and made her way at night towards Lisbon. At the Portuguese capital, she arrived at the British embassy unannounced. She told the second in command, as the ambassador was in London, of her role as a double agent, and asked that they contact Lawrence Thornton to tell him where she was. That led to a flight home to Northolt near London, where Thornton met her. She was debriefed. Her knowledge of the Americans who supplied the coordinates was recorded in due course and sent to America, and it led to the capture of 33 arrests. The Duchesne spy ring, which you can Google, in America was broken, and they served the length of the war in prison. Hilda was then given a grueling interview as a British officer tried to break her before asking her to translate secret technical German texts, be available to share her knowledge of Germany and its structure. So during that period, an officer came with some work for her. They looked at each other, and Hilda recognized the officer as the former Hamburg consul based, tenor Francis Shepherd, while he recognized her as his accompanying oboist in the late 20s and early 30s, when they performed regularly together. An early romance was in the air until Francis left a note on Hilda's desk which depressed her. He was to travel to the Belgian Congo to be the Consul General at Leopoldville. The war ended, and Hilda was keen to return to Germany to find her relatives. She was to learn that her son Otto was killed in Russia's Operation Barbarossa in November 1941. Her sister-in-law, Renata, was found to be the granddaughter of a Jewish family and was gassed. Brother-in-law Karl died in North Africa in October 1942. She had no remaining German relatives, nor a need to reside in that country. On her return to London, Francis Simpson had returned from the Congo and had been appointed British ambassador in Finland. They met again, went to see the Mikado and King Lear showing in London. On his last day in England, Francis took Hilda to St Paul's Cathedral, and after the service was over, as they descended the steps, Francis took 2 steps ahead and got down on one knee. They were engaged. But Hilda's war was not over. She could not travel to Finland. She had received a citation to give evidence against Herr Reich at the Nuremberg trials. That took place in November 1945. Eich's counsel raised the question that it was not Hilda giving evidence, as Hilda drowned in Portugal. Eich was stunned to learn she was a double agent and had not drowned at all. Eich was found guilty of sending many Hamburg and surrounding area Jews to the gas chambers. He was hanged 1 month later. Hilda joined her fiancé in Helsinki and was married there. They served at 2 further posts in Iran and Poland as ambassador and his wife before retiring to the Cotswolds. Hilda visited her cousins and other relatives in 1954, and I met her in Kirriemuir then, but I knew little of her past. She died 2 years later in 1956, and Sir Francis died in 1961. And that's the story of Hilda, the reluctant spy. This is one of the last true spy stories of World War II to be divulged. Questions?
So thank you.